Hello and welcome to what will be almost certainly the final vlog of my of the Educating Rita series, and hopefully we can chalk it up to the better late than never category. In my defense, basically 2 days after closing night, I got a very bad cold, and then maybe I'll get less sympathy about this, but a week later, with that very bad cold, I went to Europe for a couple weeks. And then when I got back, the cold was still persisting and I was getting back into the swing of things. So I just took it easy, as easy as possible to try to get over the cold. I may cough because it's still lingering, but that's my excuse for having left this video for so long. But I committed to doing it, and I think it might be a useful, well, it's useful for me anyways, to think through the goal of this essay, this vlog, what I promised was a self-assessment of how well I did or didn't do as a director in the final product of Educating Rita. So I thought I would use as a framework, and notes this time, I thought I would use as a framework the three challenges that I highlighted earlier in the vlog series that the script presented. So I characterize it as 3 challenges, but it's really probably 4. I cheated by saying 2A and 2B. But so the first one is that the first act is too long and the second act is too short. The second one is that the challenge of the play is that ultimately it was really just 2 people talking to each other. And the temptation, so A, it's 2 people just talking to each other in a confined space. And they spend a lot of time talking about things that take place outside of the room, that take place outside of the drama of the play. So that was a challenge that I had to be aware of. And the third one, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, was the challenge of patriarchy. But in this case, somewhat amplified by the fact that Willie Russell had written such a compelling character in Frank that I really wanted to be careful to make sure that the play stayed firmly rooted in as a story about Rita. So the first one, first act was too long, second act was too short. Honestly, I think in terms of successes and non-successes, this was probably, at least the first part of the problem, the least successful, the challenge that I was least able to address. I went to see the show, 3-4 times, I think. And every single time, at the exact same moments, I felt, I wish this first half was just a little bit shorter. I know specifically where I would cut it if I had been working with Russell back when he was first developing the play. But as a director, I don't think any director should ever cut anything out of a play. And this should, so particularly if they're struggling with something. So I don't think cutting would be the solution. What we did do that I think really helped, first of all, Kenny, our sound designer, provided us with original music, and I think that really helped. It was, especially in the first half, just helped us get through the transitions a little bit more, just make the transitions a bit more interesting for the audience. And the other really important piece of the puzzle that helped move us along was that the actors, Allison and Mike, were both really good about willing to be stagehands, and so we were able to get through the transitions probably as quickly as possible. I mean, if we had a bit more time, we might have been able to shave off a few seconds here and there, but ultimately their willingness and their just good-naturedness to buckle down and be moving chairs and shifting bottles and all that kind of stuff really helped us keep the thing moving along. But at the end of the day, I still felt people were probably, even for the, we had some great audiences and people who were with us from beginning to end, but invariably there would be a little dip in attention. You could just kind of feel it dip off a little bit, and then it would pick back up because the script, still worked. But if it would have been nice to be able to not have that dip, even with our friendliest of audiences. But I think we did as much as we could, and sometimes there are like, I'm not even sure how we could change it, so I'm trying to think of some ideas. Maybe we could have done it more Brechtian, where without having the lights come down, so there was stuff happening that might be a little bit more visual exciting. But I think audiences really like having the lights come down. That gives them an opportunity to kind of chat with their friends and all the rest of it. So I don't know if you have any suggestions on how to resolve a first act that's too long that doesn't involve cutting the play. Please feel free to leave some comments, especially if you saw the play. I'd love to hear it. As far as the second half being too short, I think as a playwright and as a director, I still think it's too short. I think Willie just does too much in too short of a time, particularly after that first half being so long and he takes so much time to develop the characters. But as an audience member, which is really ultimately the most important consideration, I really came to like the second half. Maybe it was in part because the first half was so long, but and again, this is a credit to Allison and Mike, that just the second half just hummed along. It went through the proper emotional roller coaster. We saw the characters develop. They hit all their marks. Everything happened. And just went effortlessly almost. I don't want to say quick, because quick makes it sound rushed, but it was when the second act started, I knew that things were just going to go right through into the end, and basically they nailed it every night that I saw, more or less. So what can I say on that? I think it's credit to the actors that they really made that second half work, even though I guess from a theoretical perspective, I think everything happens just a little too quickly. From an audience perspective, I think everyone enjoyed it, and plays and colonoscopies share a lot in common. One, which is, if no matter how good or bad the beginning is, if the ending's good, you're going to have a good memory. So I think even from that perspective, if the audience stayed with us the whole way, I'm sure they went home feeling good and having enjoyed themselves, because that second half was so good. So I guess 2A, 2B, or maybe 2 and 3. So ultimately the play, one of the challenges of the play was that this was just two people talking to each other. And then there was this issue of, so much of the story, so much of the exposition being about things that happened off stage. I'll start with that one because that was actually, probably the easiest. I think, insofar as I was aware that it was an issue, insofar as in identifying that challenge, the problem is already solved. And so, going through the process and directing and working with the actors, we always made it very clear that the story that we're telling is this one that happens between these two characters. Anything that happens off stage is just for the sake of this story between these two characters. It worked really well. Well, actually, in point of fact, that reminds me, and this is where Kenny's music really helped out. There's like a very minor little scene, or seemingly minor scene, where at the second half, where Frank makes the decision to call Rita or try to get a hold of her and tell her that the examination has that he's entered to the examination. And there is a real temptation, I think, and to some extent I fell for it in the early going, but this is where Kenny's music really helped out, was that just kind of, it seems, on the face of it, it's a very, an expositionary section of play where it's just Frank communicating information to the audience to help us get to the final scene. But as we rehearsed it, and as we started to see it on its legs, and as Kenny's music came into play, he had a nice little synth effect that he dropped in that scene. It really emphasized that's the turning point of the play from a narrative and dramatic perspective. That's the decision that brings it all together. It's not, as some people online think, it's not because Rita saw that her friend killed herself. It's because Frank reached out and told her about that he had enrolled her in the exam. He didn't have to do that. She didn't have to write the exam. It was the culmination of their relationship, and it happened on that piece, on that stage, in that set. So again, that's another. For me, that was a good example of where good music, good design work can help the director make sense of the play. The two people talking on stage, again, I think I did this pretty well. This really came down to me making sure that the actors used as much of the stage as possible. trying to keep it natural in terms of them moving around the stage, never letting anyone get trapped behind desks or in front of desks or in chairs or around chairs, trying to build new interesting spaces on stage. One neat little move was when Rita grabs her chair and sits down next to Frank to help convey the sense that it was a pub, because he wanted to he wanted to be down at a pub. So I think on the whole, I did pretty well on that front. You know, the script says Rita moves a lot, so that helps. So it was just a matter of listening to what Willie wrote and giving Rita a lot of energy. Kudos to Allison to taking it on board and jetting all over the place as required and demanded, making it natural. Kudos to Mike in terms of you know, there's a real risk. You know, there's a real risk and temptation to just leave Frank behind the desk, or sitting, or being very static in contrast to Rita. But you know, we gave Frank opportunities to move, and Mike helped sell it. He kept it natural. It was always very believable, even though in reality these people were moving around way more than any that would ever take place in a real tutorial. But hey, this is theater, and I think everyone got that. I think in terms of the self-assessment portion, there was one cross that really never worked. It was a cross from Rita to a window. So I think maybe the second or third performance was like, I know how I could make that work. But rather than I'm a firm believer that once the play is on its feet or in performance, you go with it, unless it's, you know, some kind of cataclysmic failure. But it wasn't horrible, and in fact, I think many people might not even notice, but it was just one of those little, like, a little thing, like, you know, a little piece of loose skin on the back of your, every time I saw it, I was like, oh, I could have fixed that. The third one, I mean, I have to be honest about this, is I got lucky. In the rehearsal hall, I didn't think through carefully enough the implications of the, I can't remember what they call it, but there's a screen that has to come down in the case of fire. So there has to be room for this screen to come down. There can be no furniture underneath it. And when we were, so the stage right chair, we just got lucky. There was a real risk that we might have had to get rid of the chair, and which we had spent a lot of time building action around. But it just happened to work out that we could just get the chair and the table on this on the audience side of the screen, and so in the end, you know, we were able to keep that piece of furniture and blocking in place. But literally, like, you know, to some extent we actually kind of violated the fourth wall, because part of the set was kind of leaning out, you know, off the reality of the play. So I mean, so the takeaway from there is that even it's just, you know, as a director, you gotta think those things through when you're in a rehearsal. Yeah, it made sense to have a chair down there. It made sense to turn it into a little reading nook. That was all good from an aesthetic perspective, but at the end of the day, you got to remember that there are considerations such as, you know, fire screens that drop, and you got to build into that. So I got a little bit lucky on that one, but that's a good sort of memory or, you know, thinking note for future reference. There's more to deciding where to put a chair than aesthetics, I guess. On the third item, the risk that the story or the play would become too focused on Frank. Again, I think this is a circumstance where we actually succeeded very nicely. Kudos to Allison and Frank, because I think because of their hard work and because of the chemistry that they had on stage together, we found that really nice balance where the play clearly was about Rita, but Frank was still able to have that story arc where he thought the play was all about him. So I think we hit both those notes. Frank still got to be self-indulgent. He didn't turn into you know, wallpaper. We didn't have to make the character less interesting or contain the character. Frank had that story arc where he thinks that he's the most important person in the world and this story is all about him. We told that story, and yet the whole time it was very clear that the story was about Rita, and we weren't tempted to make the story about Frank. So that's kudos to the actors, Allison and Mike. But I think there's also there was another subtle, well, not even subtle. I think an important help that was provided to us from the costume designer Peggy and the makeup designer Sarah. So the easy costume temptation would have been to give Rita a basic dress or something, and she could change her scarf or her hat or whatever. But Peggy went all out in the first half. Basically, Rita had a costume change for every single scene, and then she had this this very dramatic transformation after the second act. It's one of those. I don't think anyone would have thought, oh, this play is more about Rita because she's having so many costume changes. But because Rita had so many costume changes, it was the audience was, I think, geared to be looking at Rita all the time. What she's going to wear, how is her transformation, what's going to take place, So it just drew the audience's attention to Rita and helped keep them focused on Rita, which and then again helped and made it easier for Frank to have to do his full story. And then the costume change of the second half, I have never heard audiences gasp for a costume change, and I heard it several times in the performances I saw, so kudos to Peggy for that. And then I think the work that Sarah did with Selena, who she was mentoring, the makeup and the hair changing, again, very subtle, I think very subtle stuff, but things that helped really frame the story around Rita, just by bringing the audience's attention to Rita. It helped focus everyone's attention on the fact that this was Rita's story. So, in the end, I mean, I guess my overall assessment is that we produced, at the end of the day, we produced something that we could all be proud of. The actors, myself, the designers, the audience is clearly the audiences that we brought into the house were, on the most part, quite large. They all seemed to really enjoy themselves. There were a couple times when I was there where people applauded for every scene change right through to the end. So we produced a work of theater that I think we can all be proud of individually and collectively. We got some bums in seats, and so I guess at the end of the day, a job well done. Of course, there are opportunities for improvement. If I had a little bit more rehearsal time, I could have fixed a few bips and bobs here's and there's. But I think if I ever looked at something I did and I was like, oh yeah, that was perfect, I would be immediately suspicious that I'd hit my head or something, because I want to come out of any kind of creative exercise, whether it's writing or directing or acting or producing theater. I want to come out of that exercise feeling satisfied at the work I've done, but have some direction on where to go to improve things. So all in all, for me, it was a very satisfying process and production. I'm very thankful to the actors and all the designers and all the crew and all the people who brought this show to life. The director and the actors get a lot of attention, but really, it is literally a community of people that make it possible for something like Educating Rita to take place. And we all, should take pride in the fact that we produced the work. So job well done. Arr.